We won't go over all of them, but I think you can see why I call him the real education president. Many people claim to be so, but I think Johnson is the one that really did it. This did not make him tremendously popular here in Texas. But when you go on up the ladder, your view sometimes changes, and you see things not from a local perspective, but from a national perspective. And so I said this earlier, there's just no telling how those 2 years that Johnson spent with disadvantaged black kids, or excuse me, Hispanic kids, there's just no telling what impact that had on his psyche and made him amenable to the type of legislation that he passed as president. He might not have supported that at all as senator. Violence, a lot of long, hot summers. 1968 was the assassinations of both Martin Luther King and Robert Kennedy. Curriculum dissatisfaction, lots of kids not taking the new courses. As we talked, there were declining test scores. Basic skills were eroding. Kids couldn't read, write, or compute anymore. And we have the beginnings of something which came to be called accountability. And that may be the worst cuss word that educators have ever heard. The first case in which a graduate sued a school for not teaching him happened in California during these years. Now, he did not win. No one has won since. But someday, some fool judge is going to say, okay, that's worth $6 million, and the schools are going to be in big trouble. The beginnings of the taxpayer revolt. We've got an increased unwillingness to support schools. People are beginning to grumble all over again. It's been about 100 years since Stewart et al., the Kalamazoo decision. The current taxpayer revolution begins. Going on to the Coleman report. James S. Coleman was the researcher. The grant was called Equality of Educational Opportunity. Actually, the report was called the Equality of Educational Opportunity. People call it the Coleman Report. It was a study authorized by the Civil Rights Act of 1964. It found inequalities between white and black opportunity. Specifically, it found that whites, or let's say white schools, had more science and language labs, smaller teacher-to-student ratios, more and newer books, greater access to extracurricular activities, more college preparatory offerings, and greater access to intelligence testing. Now, what that last one has to do, I don't know. I'm simply reporting what Coleman found. Also, greater access to qualified teachers. These teachers were certified to teach the subjects that they taught. Blacks, or let's say black schools, had, these are quite a bit different now, fewer classmates with high school graduates as mothers. Now, why would you study that? Probably searching for answers. Why don't these kids do as well? Because mommy didn't do that well and is not helping them. There's no role model there. More classmates from larger families. Well, what does that have to do? Statistics don't lie, but liars can use statistics. You've heard that before. There is a statistical program that will show you that IQ goes down the larger the number of children in a family. The firstborn has the highest IQ, the secondborn next highest, the thirdborn on down, the fourthborn on down, down. What accounts for that? Probably mommy and daddy time. Let's be generous to daddy. Mainly mommy time, but let's give daddy a little oar to put in the water. The first kid gets 100% attention for however many months there are before the birth of the next kid. Probably 9. The second kid gets 50% of mommy time until the birth of the next child. The next kid gets 1/3, 1/4, 1/5. So that access to parents gets smaller and smaller the further you are on down the line. Yes, I know that you have access to big brothers and sisters, but that doesn't seem to do much IQ-wise. And the study is simply reporting what it found. More classmates from large families. Lower enrollments in English, science, mathematics, and foreign language. Those courses were not as popular in the black schools as they were in the white schools. Fewer kids took them. The main conclusion was that the achievement of minority pupils depends more on the schools they attend. I'll let that one soak in. Than does the achievement of majority pupils. In other words, you take minority kids and put them in achieving schools, they should achieve that. Well, then why don't we? And consensus said that blacks should be educated. Well, how are you going to get them there? Well, let's take some buses. Read bust in good, read white schools. Let me say that once more. Consensus said that blacks should be educated in good schools. How did that shake out? Blacks should be bused to white schools. And that conclusion was used as the basis of public policy for years to come. Busing, 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 busing. Now, some school districts still use it today, but it's not for the purpose of desegregation as it was here. Criticism of the Coleman report. Well, first of all, they used a survey, and your major professor will yuck all over you when you say you want to do a survey. The respondents, the people that filled out the survey, were superintendents, principals, teachers, and students, and they mainly answered this thing in the North and the West, and they mainly didn't answer it in the South and the East. So it's skewed. The results are skewed to the Northwest. Returns, Northwest 72 to 80%, Southwest 61 to 65%. Editorial musing. This is just me saying, well, gee, what if? Blacks in white schools may have achieved more than blacks in black schools because they may have been, actually they probably were because they could afford to live there, higher on the socioeconomic ladder to begin with, and you know what that means. You may not know what that means. The number one predictor of success in school is socioeconomic status. Rich kids do better than poor kids. That is it. That is the number one thing. So if you got black kids attending white schools, that means those are higher socioeconomic class black students than the ones who are still attending black schools. And they're probably higher on the socioeconomic ladder to begin with. Enough said, moving on.